Hey everybody, what is going on? This is Scott Garber, co-founder of Profluent Sports, back in the saddle where we are highlighting founders, investors, executives across the entire sports business landscape. Today, I am excited to bring on our next guest. I can almost guarantee that we have not had a conversation like this, as you know, Bragg House is doing some really exciting, innovative things in the space. But as you guys know, this isn't my story to tell. So excited to bring the founder and CEO of Bragg Sports, LaVelle Juan, onto the podcast. LaVelle, my man, welcome. How are we doing today?
We're doing great. Thank you so much, Scott, for having me. Scott, really excited to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm excited as well. And, you know, we got on and LaVelle will quickly tell you that he is a New York native. And so we were just sort of sharing some misery of the Knicks. But you know, today we're going to get to know LaVelle and his journey. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on Bragg House and how they're differentiating themselves in the market. And then we're going to go right into sort of what, you know, all the turbulence that's going on in the collegiate world and how we continue to redefine and shape what that looks like. So LaVelle, let's jump right in, man. Let's let the listeners know a little bit about the origin story. Who are you? Where do you come from? And then we'll build from there.
Well, thank you again for having me. And, you know, my story, I think, kind of ties into what I'm really excited about. So I was a former collegiate athlete, then went on to kind of help athletes and also build environments around sports. And I kind of really took that because I thought that, you know, there was a need. How can you combine traditional sports with something that I enjoy doing casually, which is gaming, and then having that kind of social feel? So when I got out of college sports, I still wanted to connect. I still wanted to be part of it, you know, and really kind of put that world together. So, you know, that was kind of like my story. You know, I went from there to actually becoming a lawyer. And then from there to, you know, kind of, I got a call from a couple of college athletes who went pro and, you know, they really kind of needed help. And I said, hey, you know what, let me jump in that, really kind of create a community for them. That was very successful. So I had two really good startups, one dealing with NFL rookies. Another one was actually dealing with minor league soccer, which was really cool. But at the end of the day, it was really the same kind of platform. It was building a community, you know, around communities together. And that's why I believe they're both successful, because you had that compassion, you had that camaraderie, you had that rivalry. You know, I think the other thing we talked about before we got on is none of these people will be or friends until they had something to cheer over. And that's kind of what happened. So then fast forward to after those two businesses were pretty successful and I had a good exit with those, I said, let me do something that I had a passion for. And, you know, a lot of people don't know this about me, but I was a huge NCAA college football fan. Played it, loved it. You know, I played Texas. That's, you know, Hook'em Horns. That's, you know, where I went. And I was like really excited about it. And then they stopped it. And they said, you know, image, likeness, all that stuff. And, you know, and I was devastated. And I was like, oh, how do you do this? As a community, you're losing. This is so cool. Like, how would you do that? So I went back and I looked and I waited. And then I think around 2018, I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to create a digital space where I think it's more fun, where people are connecting, and it'll be a medium where people can engage in sports. They can have their own teams. They can do that stuff, but it'll be through gaming, but it'll be a sports medium that they can kind of really connect. And that's kind of what we decided to do. Connect something that's on the intersection of college sports, gaming, and social interaction.
Wow. Isn't that so cool? And I mean, look at, you know, like, I mean, over on the Profluent side, you know, especially as we move into this world of agentic and generative AI, like we're asking ourselves what makes us human, right? And I think, LaVelle, like these are fundamental questions. And as, you know, tribal based creatures, I believe we all want to belong to something bigger than ourselves. And so we don't always have to reinvent the wheel. We can leverage existing communities, which it sounds like you've done, to then be able to go ahead and expand and elevate those. So I know we sort of lay the foundation there. Give us a little bit more on, you know, Bragg House, right? So understand sort of the origin of how it was built. What exactly, you know, have you guys been able to accomplish over the last 7 years? Sort of walk us through that build, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. And I think what we've been able to accomplish is something that, you know, kind of started fun, but obviously we put a business model behind it. Is we were able to create a media tech platform that revolutionized how brands connect with our prime audience, Gen Z. And again, I think the way we did that is we first, you know, because you kind of have to set the stage. And we said, okay, how do we put these kind of three things together? So the intersection, again, college sports, gaming, and social interaction. And the first way we did that is with a platform. We put together a dynamic community hub where people got to engage. We had some really cool features like bragging, which is, kind of like non-monetary, wagering. So it's not gambling, but you can still have the fun and you can win real prizes there. And we kind of really did that. And then I think the second part, which we did, is we wanted to understand the community better. And we said, okay, well, how do we understand the community better? Like, why are so many people coming to our platform? And we put these kind of data models behind it to really, really understand, what was going on. And we learned some really valuable things, that 90% of Gen Z are cord cutters. We learned that 40% of them use ad blockers. Obviously, they have a close to $400 billion disposable income spend, which makes them a wealthy audience.
Yeah.
But 90% of them game weekly. And we put all these kind of data metrics together. And what I think we ended up building, which I think was really, really cool, is we ended up building this platform on leveraging gaming, but on the backbones of data. And that data helped us to do something that no other platform was able to do. We're able to get behavioral insights to our community, and we're able to help them get what they want. And we're able to help other brands not send them all these stupid ads and send them all these kind of things and stuff, and say, okay, this is what they want. They want that new Nike sneaker. That's all they want. And they want it in September of this year when it comes in. So,
Interesting.
for us being able to get not passive, not geolocations, not things like that, but actually speaking to our community and getting these kind of behavioral things, we created something that was really, really different from other people. And
Super interesting. And let me ask you this real quick, because we're hearing this more and more, right? Did you have a hypothesis that we were going to move towards community selling and, sort of this idea that brands would engage with the community instead of direct to consumer? Or is that something that naturally just sort of intersected with this build along the way?
Great question. I think, and I'll be very transparent, I think it was more natural. We built the community first, and it's funny because when I first started in 2020, I got invited to all these panels because we kind of went viral from our first, activation, our first tournament that we had. And we went viral. So everyone started reaching out to us, like, oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. It's awesome. And when I started speaking, I was like, yeah, community first, authenticity. And I think those were just words at the time. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I heard other people saying, and this is actually really interesting, because I was kind of grouped together, which is, not an issue, but I was kind of grouped together with esports, which is like a $3 billion, instead of gaming, which is a $300 billion.
Yeah.
And the interesting part about that is that there's an overlap. Esports is for professional gamers, even though casual people watch it. Gaming involves, a really, really big ecosystem that, but there's a crossover. So when I started speaking about these things, I feel like people thought it was kind of touchy-feely until they started seeing that, our numbers and our engagement level, which were higher than all industry standards. And then I think people realized, they were like, oh, okay, this is, you're being able to capture an audience that we can't capture. And again, I'll say it, which I know you could appreciate, Scott. The reason why we're able to capture it was because of authenticity. We built a real community. Again, it's like you tell me about the University of Texas playing Oklahoma. I don't care if you're rooting for Texas. We're best friends.
100%. 100%.
So it's like we're able to kind of connect that, leverage that community. We did that. We built all these kind of different things that we like about them, and even the data. The selling of the data. And just want to say for the record, obviously we privacy, all those kind of things are number one in our platform. Yep. But even with kind of doing that, we did that so they would understand the community, made sure the community was okay. So they signed off and they said, yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that you learn that you don't realize is that the community wants to be engaged, but just in the right way.
Isn't that so powerful when you build the framework, and it's in the form of a community, yep, which is a business underneath?
Absolutely.
LaVelle, I think you'll nod your head, but people want to give more than they take. And
Absolutely.
So I think that's been the biggest takeaway for us as we've gone down the journey, where it's like, wow, if you give space, people get fulfillment in taking their skill set or their attributes and giving it to the community, just as much as what can you do for me? Have you guys experienced that in your world?
Yep, totally. I mean, it's one of the biggest things that I think we have in part of the data models that, that we built out was surveys. And, we really had surveys, and they work together along with all the other different functionalities in our platform. And the feedback we'll get, oh my God, yes, please, this sounds great. I really wish someone would do this. I really wish, really give insights to how they want people. I could not have said it better. please reach out to us, please talk to us. And you think that they're being elusive because they don't want to be reached out to. When the real thing is they just don't want to be reached out to in the wrong way.
You got it, man. But let me ask you this, because building an authentic community,
Yep.
very challenging. And when we think about acquiring users, if I'm having to pay for ads and get in front of you, we've always felt that sort of diminished the authenticity.
Yep.
How, like, talk to us about your acquisition strategy, leveraging some of these large multinational brands like a Texas or an Oklahoma. How has that acquisition journey been? And then, like, from a CAC standpoint, have you been able to cut that and lower that to extend sort of the lifetime value of your user there? Really curious, like, what your model's been there.
Yeah, great question. So I think the easiest way to start is kind of with how our activation, I use that word a lot, and I can explain a little bit. So an activation is we don't allow ads or that type of stuff unless they're actually curated naturally that we prepare ourselves.
Interesting.
So activation, and I'll just use the example that we just did with our partner Learfield, which I'll talk more about later. We did an activation really to test it out. We wanted to make sure it worked. Again, we're creating this new sports medium. We address that there's a group of people, Gen Z, a group of people that engage differently. They don't watch, 4 hours of sports, but they really want to be engaged in the community somehow. So that's the first thing we did is put that together, figured out how that worked. And what it really was is we took what are people doing every day. So we said, hey, you know what? Play Fortnite. I enjoy playing Fortnite. Let's do something, a Fortnite activation. But we did something really cool. We said, hey, you know what? We're connecting it to traditional sports. So we're trying to connect this to baseball. I play baseball because I love baseball. A lot of people sit down and watch hours and hours of baseball, granted. So we said, how do we connect that? So we said, hey, you know what? Let's put baseball rules. Let's, hey, if you're in the top 25% of your lobby, if you have this many, kills or something like that, however we want to do, if you have 7 eliminations, we're going to pick that grand slams, home runs. We're going to connect that to there. We did that. We had a very, very engaged audience with all sports kind of definitions, all sports acronyms, all put through there, changed the entire ecosystem of it. But again, built it out naturally. And it was such a success. It's
all right,
like
so
everyone's engaged.
I got to go down this and we're going to come back. So put a place mark in that story.
Yeah.
We talk so much around the power of language, right?
Absolutely.
And within communities, linguistics separates what everybody else does versus how Bragg House engages.
Yep.
How intentional were you guys with with your community? And at what point did you realize if we start different naming nomenclatures or if we have different slogans that attach us back to Bragg House, that would separate us? I would love for you to touch on that because I think it's one of the things that gets overlooked that is some of the most powerful behavioral change mechanisms within building these communities. Would love for you to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, just to answer the question outright, it was very intentional. Even Bragg House, the name was very intentional. Bragging, which is, I said, like the wagering was very intentional. Bragg board was very, very intentional. The nomenclature that we had with sports and baseball and stuff was very intentional. And again, one of the main reasons we did that is the first thing that we talked about. Not only does the community want people to reach out to them, they want to be part of something that's original, that they can actually say, so everyone is talking about this one thing over here. We don't want to be part of that. We want our own, Bragg gaming event. We want our own, Bragg, that's what it's called, Bragg Gators thing.
Yeah.
We want our own thing. And that becomes, we're a part of this. We're building this. We're competing with this. We're in that ecosystem of it. And that is how this community, which to their benefit, good. That's how they want to be accepted to it. They're like, yeah, this is our series. The Bragg Gator series. We run all our sports through it. This is how we engage. We participate. Our friends are playing. We're watching this. We're rooting them on. We've now created an entire ecosystem that's outside, but also connected.
It's so cool to understand and watch someone of your status sort of unpack the intentionality around it. And I think so often we try and focus on the extrinsic materials that are going to drive the community and the engagement. And the reality is it's the intentionality intrinsically that makes people feel like they belong. So I'm really glad we went down that route there. So let's sort of go. You got something to add to it?
Well, I was going to just add too, and just so you
Please.
know, like how intentional it was. What we don't talk about as often, and it was probably one of the proudest moments for me, not just, the business we built. When we first started, we had ambassadors. And the main purpose of those ambassadors was to have a sounding board of what we're doing. Does it make sense to them? What do they want to see? What are the games that they're doing? And at one point, we went from 5 to like over 100 just people who just wanted to be part of the community. And it's definitely something we want to revisit, but that was all intentional. And I think you kind of identified it. The reason why a lot of these brands can't do what we're doing is because they haven't taken that community step to really understand it and build around it. It's like, these are the 7 things in the advertisement industry. These are the 7 things in the gaming industry. Let's use those. And it doesn't work that way.
And I always say this, it's sort of like culture. You can't buy culture. And I don't think you can buy community, right? These take long, intentional builds, but then it
Yep.
creates something that money can accelerate, but I don't think it can replace it. And so, like, I think there's a couple interesting things, and you can help me steer where we take this next, but building a community is one thing, right? It's one thing to get people to buy into it and they're excited, and now we have different mechanisms. LaVelle, talk to me about, how do you build a business around the community? Like, at what point do you say, okay, great, now we have everybody engaging. How do I commercialize this without compromising the authenticity and engagement that it took to get here? Would love for you to elaborate that on how that journey's been for you.
Yeah, and excellent question. So the 2 main revenue drivers have been the same. They've been digital advertising, as we define it, which I'll elaborate on, and they've really been the data. So the digital advertisement, as I explained, again, you have to look at the ROI of what the brands are trying to do. They want to get in front of, they want to have people pay attention to them longer. So we say, okay, well, we sit down and we review and we put together, again, first, this amazing platform for them. And to the extent we'll have a commercial or something, we'll curate the commercial. We'll work with their studios, we'll do all that stuff. We'll put it as an intermission, but we're creating this entire ecosystem around them first. So then the result is they are on longer, saying, okay, that's great. If there are prizes and different things they want to win, and the client, for example, says, hey, we want you to download, we want them to download our app. That'll be part of the, KPIs that we add in there. But it all starts, it's really like an algorithm. It's like, first do this, first you like this. If this makes sense for you, now you can go over here. And again, if you work with their community, it becomes really, really, really easy. It's like, because you're not you're not shoving things down their throat. You're actually talking to them, and this community that we've been very happy that we are the main part of our platform. They love being part of it. So every opportunity that we get to them to say, what's your voices? What do you want to see? What do you want to do? They're like, great, let us give our opinion. We're very, very vocal. We'll do this. We'll download this. We'll watch this. We'll give you our take on this. We'll give you our take on what this beverage is. And that kind of engagement has been what the ROI and stuff people are. So really, the first thing we do from a digital advertising side is we tell people, if you want to work with us and you want to get this community to engage with you, we have to be in charge of the final creative product. And as long as we're in charge of the final creative product, obviously, the way you can distribute them and use their marks and stuff like that. And as long as we do that, we can guarantee these results. So as long as we can guarantee the results, and then you have to look at it from their side, they're like, wow, if the users are engaging, and I think our average, I forget the numbers offhand, but I think it's like 24 minutes, an average, which is insane for any kind of Gen Z audience. They're like, we spend millions, and if not more than that, on Super Bowl ads, and we get seconds, and you can get 24 minutes from your thing, and the community is not bothered because they're happy. That's a win-win for everybody. The second part is really the data. I'll be honest, we kind of want the data to really take over. We're kind of looking at more metrics of like a SaaS model in 2026. And the reason why is because all these things that we can give you things of value that you can create your own marketing campaigns, period, then let us run our ecosystem. Let us run all these things. You're looking at all the streaming services. I don't know what brain, not insulting, but I don't know what, authorities that be that says, let's just keep raising the price and throwing in more commercials. That's how you lose an audience.
Yeah.
So we want to just give them everything they want. So it's like, hey, because our data is so valuable, let's give you access to that. Now you know what people want. You have their exact opinions. If, some of our audience wants to actually, give the direct consumer, as long as they allow that, that's fine. Now you can have that. Now they can do something that no other company can do. They can lower their cost of acquisition. And if you can lower your CAC and lower your cost of acquisition, you're above all the other brands. And 100%. Every single company has a cost of acquisition, from Tesla to McDonald's to every single. So if we can do that, and that's what our data does, make sure that you can only spend what you need to do, have a higher conversion rate, then you know what? Bragg House will always be valuable to them.
It's so interesting. I mean, you guys built a great aggregator, right? Like, and I think that as we talk to larger endemics, they're struggling to communicate to millennials.
Yeah.
Never mind understand
Yeah.
the fundamental changes that a more impact driven generation is coming in. We don't behave, we don't transact the same way. So I'm curious, and then we're going to come back to Bragg House and we'll start to bring this thing home. Over 7 years of building this,
Yep.
right, and understanding the younger generation, what is your pulse? What is your hot take on Gen Z, both from a behavioral standpoint and a generational standpoint on where their behaviors are moving the market?
I think, again, you have to look at their spend, and I don't think people really give credit for their spend. Their spend is $360 billion of spending power. That's a lot,
Wow.
and I think that what we've seen, is that we've seen that they are an audience, that they love their friends, they love their community, they follow their community, and they want to be part of us. And what I learned from that is like, again, I played sports, and I'm like, everybody wants to be an athlete, but in their own way though. Not I'm saying professional. Everybody wants to be that person. Or if you don't want to be that person, you want to root for people like you. These are common things that you do. So
100%.
we have such a good, like, what we don't talk about again as much is that we have such a good spectator following because they're seeing people, they could be on the chess team, but they see people in our community who are playing their game and they're like, that's the athlete I want to root for. Because he's in my class, he's like me. He's not again, we incorporate, student athletes as well. But when you see someone who's just like you, you're like, I love that. That's so much. So they love their audience. They love people that are like them. And then the other thing is they really want to make a difference. And that's the reason why we can, get the ROIs or the KPIs that we want to do because they are having an impact. You're not telling them what to do. You're asking them, does this make sense? And they're like, absolutely, we want to do it.
It's so cool. I was at a conference in the Hamptons last week, and it was a gentleman who was the head creative for Converse, and they were talking about boomers to millennials to then Gen Z and Alpha, and someone asked the question, "What does cool look like for Gen Z?"
That's
And so much of it, and I'm like, well, actually, you know what? What is your answer to that? Like, what does cool look like for Gen Z? And then I'll share the
I
sentiment.
would love to hear what he says. If I answered it, I would say it depends on every single audience there is, and it's different from every single one of the Gen Z there. And I go back to the example. It's like someone cool could be the quarterback for UT, who everyone knows, or it could be cool. But hey, the guy in my chess club who just obliterated everyone else because he's really, really good in Fortnite. That could be cool. And
Yep.
that's how we build out our community because we know not one size fits all. So we give everyone an experience, everyone a platform. And it's like, what people do, again, people take the 7 big things that work. Let's get influencers. We look at it and say, everybody's an influencer. So it's like, you know what? You have people in your net. I'd rather get this person who has 10 friends and get 1,000 of them to bring all their 10 friends in. And then that stickiness is going to stay there. And if you do that with all these different groups and stuff, and that's how our platform is set up, you can find people, not just from university, but people with your like interest, do those kind of things, and when you do that together, now you have millions and millions and millions of people all connected by shared experiences though. Instead of
You
just,
hit the nail on the head. And I got to tell you, I have to share an optimistic lens here where I believe Gen Z is on the cusp of bringing impact back to the forefront, where I think that, community has felt like it's eroded over the last few generations. And we're watching almost this renaissance period of like, it's bigger than just me as a person. It's like, how do we marry social impact and
yep,
business and do this in a way that is not forced, but like you said, I'm participating in it. So I think that, hearing the $360 billion market cap that will only continue to grow, depending on who you talk to, there may be tints of pessimism as to where
yeah.
younger generations are going. LaVelle, I think I feel more empowered and more excited, especially after conversations like this. So let's talk about where you're going, man. Bragg House seems to be in a really healthy spot right now. What's on the horizon? Where do you see the ecosystem and community going towards?
Well, I'm just super excited because again, as we built this out, my dream, and again, it's a team effort. I have an amazing team, amazing management, amazing, board of directors, but my vision was always to tie in the what you see every day on traditional college sports with what people enjoy doing from gaming perspective. That's me playing my favorite team to really connecting with people. And that was now put to fruition from our recent Learfield partnership. It's just to see 7 years and everything culminate to that was just super exciting. And for people who don't know Learfield, and people hear the name, but formerly IMG, it's a billion-dollar conglomerate. They own the media rights to most of the top universities. And, they kind of came to us and they said, hey, they obviously do really well with their media rights, with their ticketing, with their merchandising. But again, exactly what you said, this new, community who just gathers information differently. There was a space that was not being connected. So again, revenue, obviously, we're a for-profit business, but it always started with how do I connect the community and build something fun for them. So when we first started about 2 years ago, actually, was maybe a year and a half ago, was a negotiation. I said, well, let's do this first. Let's take all your college athletes and let's send a survey to them and ask them if this is something that they even like. So we started with the University of Florida, their Gators athletics. And we said, hey, and it was unanimous. It just came back with all 500 athletes. This is amazing. This is great. We would even do this without NIL, some people said. And that showed, and so people were like, wow, this is amazing. And I was like, yeah, because you're building something for people that they're really, really excited. So for me, to wrap it all together, for me, building this sports medium where everybody can engage in something that I think is just so passionate, where everyone can get a chance to have those rivalries, when everyone can get a chance, we're doing another activation July 19th, different one to kick off kind of college football. Then in college football, we're going to do a series under the Gators Gauntlet. And that series that we're doing is really going to connect all the different, we're going to start with SEC, connect all the different schools. But a picture you, again, whatever, you don't have to be an athlete, but picture you playing the University of Florida. Again, I'm not even sure what game we're going to be using. I don't want to spoil any surprises, but you represent your school. You have a difference to say that they're going to beat this other school. Like, every person wants that opportunity to say, I can do that, have your own spotlight around them, do so well that people want to interview you, enter some really cool prizes. You've created a sports medium now that people are super excited about. This is how they're engaged. And then again, full 180 of everything. Then we're going to have actually student athletes. And again, we don't want them just for football. We want tennis. We want, women's tennis. We want women's softball. We want everyone to come in and be part of that with just the regular student body and then put that together. So to create something that I think, personally is going to be absolutely huge, I believe it's going to be the number one engagement tool across all these universities that our partnership, gives us access to. That giving that opportunity to all those people absolutely blows my mind, and creating, obviously a revenue source that is very different than other people have, I believe is, it's again, very exciting.
It's so cool, man. And then all the while getting paid to learn where the next generation, what they care about, how they think, where they transact, why they transact. We always said community is one of the coolest ways to get paid to learn and stay curious, which keeps us fresh and fulfilled, right? And so it's so neat to hear the different expressions. It's almost like religions, right? Everyone's trying to do the same thing. We just have a different path to get there. This has been a treat learning yours. LaVelle, put your founder hat on. I think this is the last question, right? But as you reflect in the rear view of the last, sort of 7 years of this build, what is one piece of advice you would share to fellow entrepreneurs that are building, regardless of what they're building? What would you share, that stuck out along your journey that you either wish you knew or now?
I would probably a few things. One, I think it's important for every founder to set milestones. I think you want to, kind of predict where you think you're going to be, at least the things you want to accomplish. So you're like, hey, I want to at least accomplish this in 6 months. I want to accomplish this in a year. I want to accomplish this, in 2 years. And I think that would separate you from just thinking, optimistic forever. Again, I think people need that kind of grounding. So I always had these kind of measuring posts. The second thing I would say was really important is team. It's like, I get, obviously I get all the good, everything good happens to me. I get the credit for it. Everything bad, I also get blamed for it. So it works both ways. But, I love the platform I'm on, but I would be nowhere without the team. I work with my best friend who's the chief operating officer. We have a strong CFO. We have a great, external team of like, even from our accountants to our production crew that really get our vision. And our board of directors is just so supportive of me. And there's so many different branches. They're like, from like chief marketing officer of ADT to like, head of broadcasting in places, and they were able to put all those things together. I can, be soundboard. They could be soundboards to me, and I can do that. And people don't realize if you have a supportive team, you can really, really, really accomplish a lot. No one's
Yeah.
worried about their ego. They're like, LaVelle is trying to build this company, and we're okay. And then the third thing I would just say, and this is definitely the founder's hat, though, is don't be scared to be different. I was sitting on those panels and people, and I won't lie, there were, I'll say this without saying any names. There were people when I first started talking, they were just like, well, that's cute, his little thing that he's building. And now those same people are calling me and saying, hey, can we please partner with you? We love what you're doing with Learfield. Can we do that? And I wasn't scared to be different because it made sense in my mind. I listened to really, really smart people. I sat down and I was like, if I did this, if I spoke to ambassadors, if I did all the work, if I researched everything and I smoked, I listened to the older people, to the younger people, and I came with this, I think I'm right. I trust myself. So trust yourself.
Man, listen, I'm only going to come over top because I'm fresh off of New York. I was there for a week. LaVelle, that is the most iconic New York thing that we could send this podcast off with, because whether it's business, whether it's culture, New Yorkers express themselves unapologetically, and it sets the tone for what the rest of the world adopts. And I think you embody that through and through. This is the first of many to come, man. We're excited to learn and follow Bragg House. If any of our listeners want to get engaged, whether that's in the community, potential partnerships, LaVelle, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way is our website, Bragg House, BRAG, bragghouse.com. There's links to join the actual platform. There's links to leave us comments. There's links for our IR. There's links for everything that you can get in contact with. You could send things. We're pretty big, but it's still small enough that, I'll respond back to you for something really interesting. So it's like, I love engaging with everyone. So I would just say, go to the website and we encourage that. Please,
That's
please.
awesome, man. Well, listen, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And my man LaVelle, as our man Jay-Z said, you could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here. And for that, we appreciate you, man. Look forward to building alongside of you. And thanks for everything you're doing for the sports ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate you having me here, man.
Talk soon.